Hi, I'm Shilpa from Education, and this is Arnika
from Exhibitions. Welcome to Art Sparks. Today, we're looking at a photograph by T.S. Satyan of women working in a telephone factory in Bangalore, which was taken in the 1980s.
The thing that strikes me the most about this photograph are actually the telephones. The telephones, I think, are quite interesting because, like you said, the photograph being from the 1980s, I think to a degree, these telephones are also a symbol of new technology at the time, right? And I think that for me personally, it also recalls like childhood memories. So my grandparents used to have this same sort of telephone with the rotary dial. And I think it was very exciting for me as a kid because, so when you dial the number, it would go all the way down to the end and then it would whir back. And I think just the sound of it, because it would make the sound each time you turned it and each time it kind of, the mechanism turned back. So I think I would play a lot with the telephone, not that I had anybody to call.
That's interesting because actually, for me, these telephones remind me a lot of government offices. But what's also interesting about this photograph is if you look at the women, so we see 4 women in this photograph. And they are wearing saris and they have flowers tucked into their hair. And it's interesting to think about that the women are wearing what they would be wearing at home or when they go to the market. But if you look at that one male figure in the corner of the photograph, who is the supervisor of the factory, he is dressed in Western wear.
I think for me, this question of what they're wearing is also interesting because apart from the idea of clothes being a vehicle of fashion and expression, I think there's also politics that kind of can be unpacked here. And you know, the idea that women wearing saris, for me, there are also links or connections that you could make in a post-colonial moment, in a newly independent India, where they're kind of thinking about the clothes that would best express Indian culture. And this tying back specifically to women more than men.
Right. It's also an interesting moment in time in terms of where women work and of women joining the workforce at that time, stepping out of the household actively and becoming part of a larger group of workers. And I think it's interesting that this photograph was taken in Bangalore and we're looking at it in Bangalore. So it was taken by a photographer called T.S. Satyan and he was born in Mysore. He was one of the earliest photojournalists and he had been documenting political events, historical events, but he was also very interested in common people and life in general. And what really strikes me about T.S. Satyan every time I see a photograph is that there's a sense of humor. There's a very human element. And I feel like T.S. Satyan is trying to tell us a little bit of a story with each photograph instead of just showing us a representation of the event that he had captured.
That's a great point, right? And I think that the same thing appeals to me about T.S. Satyan's photography because even though he was obviously a photojournalist and this is a moment where photojournalism is exploding and you know, he is documenting history. So it's not just the history of like big events, but also just the history that is encapsulated in everyday moments, right? Like the extraordinary of the everyday. There is a quote that he where he said once that his photographs are like slices of life, gentle and personal. And I think that this particular photograph is a great example of his approach to photography.
Can I tell you a little bit about the exhibition and why we chose this photograph?
Of course. So for our audiences, this work is part of Visible Invisible, Representation of Women in Art through the MAP collection, one of MAP's inaugural exhibitions. And for this season of Art Sparks, we reached out to members from the amazing curatorial team who helped put it together. So, tell us, Arnika.
While this exhibition, of course, looks at women and how women are represented in art, it also looks at the spaces women often occupy. And there's one section within the exhibition that looks at struggle and resistance. Within this section, we're looking at a lot of labor work performed by women. And interestingly, we found a lot of artworks that show women working with water. This is different. So we were very happy to find an artwork that actually talks about women joining the workforce. And it's next to another artwork by Pamela Singh, which shows women joining the Air Force. So you have these two black and white photographs of women becoming part of a larger group of workers.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. Is there a specific reason you chose it for this particular ArtSparks episode?
Yes, I wanted to show a photograph, and I think this is again something that is a little bit surprising, and you would see it in the exhibition when you have these traditional representations of women who carry water, for example, or who do the work of washing clothes, working within the domestic space. Well, these women were in a factory, and at the same time, it was taken in Bangalore, and I found that really nice to show to our audiences here. Come and see artworks like these in our upcoming exhibition, Visible Invisible, Representation of Women in Art through the MAP collection.
Check out our website and follow us on our social media handles to stay regularly updated on everything that MAP does. Also remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more ArtSparks videos and content.
And thank you for joining us today.
Bye.